Hello and welcome to another episode of The Next Horizon, an LTIMindtree podcast on the topic of metaverse in the metaverse. We invite industry leaders to gain their perspective around metaverse and understand the opportunities and challenges they foresee as this technology now becomes mainstream. I'm your host Naina Rao from Bangalore,
And I'm Saurabh Ambani logging in from Bangalore.
and we are in a virtual space created by LTIMindtree in All Space VR, which in fact is the office twin of Microsoft's Tech Center. And we are super thrilled to have with us the head of Microsoft Technology Center, Sandeep Alur, with us here. Hey Sandeep, welcome to the Next Horizon. Does this space look familiar to you?
Naina and Saurabh, first of all, good morning and thanks for inviting me. Absolutely familiar. This is where I spend bulk of my time every single day hosting customers. So fantastic work and thanks for inviting me today.
Thank you for joining us today, Sandeep, on this podcast. I know this topic is close to your heart and you are passionate about this topic. Why don't we begin with your definition of metaverse? How do you explain this to your clients and what fascinates you and what are the possibilities?
Wonderful. Thanks for asking, Saurabh. Here's the thing, right? So if you look up internet, when you search for metaverse as a definition, so you get multiple definitions, right? And by the way, there's nothing right or wrong about it. Every definition carries the true essence of what is metaverse. But I've made an effort in the last, I would say, 12 to 14 months to see how I can simplify it for larger audience, right? In my perspective, if you look up Gartner, Forrester, you look up any publication, there's a definition which runs into probably two or three sentences or a half a paragraph. But in my view, if I were to simplify it, metaverse is nothing more than this statement I'm making right now. It's a shared virtual 3D space. That's about it, right? It's a shared virtual three-dimensional space and where people connect, network, interact, play. So the point is, the definition is four words. Three-dimensional virtual shared space. What you do inside that is specific to business, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a healthcare, manufacturing, retail. So specific to business, they operate that way, all right? So just to repeat that statement, it's metaverse is a shared virtual 3D space. And another element I want to add here is it's agnostic of form factor. See, many times, moment metaverse as a term comes up, people assume it is VR, virtual reality, right? It's not, right? So, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, they're the channels using which you'll experience metaverse. But metaverse is agnostic of form factor, right? That's top level definition in my view, Saurabh. That's the first part of your question. Second part, in terms of what fascinates me, I think the very fact that we're able to connect, network, and work in three-dimensional space with utmost focus on location independence. I think that's a fascinating thing for me, right? Irrespective of where we are, right? Ability for us to connect in 3D space and establish that much required social connect or elevate social capital. I think that's icing on the cake for me. So that's metaverse in short for you, Saurabh.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this actually makes a lot of sense now, given that we are fresh off the pandemic lockdowns and being working remotely. So I think it just makes collaborating much more easier when you can see your colleagues, albeit in their avatars. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds promising, but can you talk about your view on the scalability of metaverse solutions, the timelines for mass adoption, and what would be the key challenges that might create hindrances towards adoption?
Perfect. So, Saurabh, I want to take a step back before I kind of probably talk about a scale and its adoption. I also want to kind of extend the definition a little bit more to ascertain some clarity here, right? Number one, when you talk about metaverse, there are three variants. This is exactly what, as Microsoft, we defined that in a recent Ignite conference: consumer metaverse, commercial metaverse, and industrial metaverse. To your question in terms of mass adoption and practicality, it all boils down to which variant of metaverse are we talking about, right? In a generic node, metaverse, we're at the starting line, tool at inception stage as we speak. There's a long path ahead in terms of its maturity, right? Right now, very, very early stages, I would say baby steps. Now, in terms of scale, see, moment you talk about scale, it's natural for businesses to look at B2C model, consumer, engaging consumers in the metaverse. Now, be it a large gathering, be it a trade show. So it's about engaging consumers, and that's where the scale comes in. Ability for us to attract a larger, social capital. Considering the fact that you want reach to be addressed. I think we're very far from that right now as we speak, because end of the day, when we talk about technology, there is a maturity curve. Right now, dominant focus, in my view, will be to ensure the connectivity aspect, the presence factor, right? I would say, when I say presence, how real that is, considering the fact that it's a virtual representation of our physical self, right? How relatable that is for audience in the metaverse. I think that's where the focus right now is when it comes to innovation. In my view, scale will happen over a period of time, because today we are at the luxury of having solutions being cloud powered. So I would not worry much about scale right now. When it comes to adoption, there is a trust trail one has to walk past, right? How do people trust this platform? Right? When I say platform, it's about metaverse. Do people trust communicating in the metaverse? Is it very real for them? Do they get a sense of belonging? I think that's where we're looking at innovations to happen. That is so essential for metaverse to succeed in the long run. If you don't solve that today, you can't address scale adoption without trust factor coming in from eventual end consumers. Yeah, long story, Saurabh, but that's my view in terms of where we are and where industry should head from here on.
No, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing your views, Sandeep.
Awesome.
Sandeep, if I may ask, a lot of use cases on HoloLens seem to be very heavy on the AR and MR side. Is that indicative of Microsoft's vision for how metaverse will evolve, especially on the enterprise side?
Nana, thanks for the question. So let me re-establish one more aspect on the platform front. As Microsoft, we announced Microsoft Mesh almost 12 to 14 months back. And Mesh is a platform which will help enterprises create metaverse experiences, right? Now, Mesh, in its true sense, when you create experience, it gives you the decoupling with form factor. It means anything you build using Mesh is agnostic of form factor. That means, as a platform provider, we're not mandating any form factor to be used to experience metaverse, right? Number one. Number two, if you look at dominant head-mounted devices, you have for mixed reality of HoloLens. Of course, for VR, you have multiple devices out there, includes start with MetaQuest, etc. Now, mixed reality is one of the many channels you may use to experience metaverse, right? As Microsoft, we've been in this space for almost a decade now, offering mixed reality experiences. Now, our point of view is this is one trail of innovation which probably offers very meaningful experience. Innovation will continue on the trail, but we're not mandating, or our perspective is to access metaverse is not through HoloLens. No, right? It's one of the many channels that we will enable through a platform mesh. But of course, using mixed reality, which is a lot more immersive compared to virtual reality, innovation would continue that trail for Microsoft.
Sandeep, staying on the topic of headsets, right? Imagine you had a wishful genie. What features would you like to see being included in the head-mounted devices? And as a follow-up to that, right, how much of a deterrent will the relatively more priced devices limit mass adoption, especially on the consumer side?
Wonderful, Lena. That's a very interesting question. Wishful thinking, but here's my take. Right, I want these devices to offer experiences which are a lot more real and relatable. Right. So my point of view is, how can you make sure it's inclusive? Now, we understand the fact that when we wear any of these head-mounted devices, right? First of all, my aspiration is for the HMD to become a wearable glass. Okay, that's the wishful thinking in terms of, can I get a wearable glass like all of us wear, like a Ray-Ban glass, anything of that sort. It should be that form factor. That's my number one big aspiration. Second, I would say, you know, rather than assuming certain emotions and representing on a specific avatar, I want experience to be a lot more inclusive, lot more real, and with utmost focus on privacy and security. Because the fact that we are entering a 3D space, and the fact that 3D space is a lot more immersive and a lot more visible in terms of how we interact. Can we make sure the emotions are real, our actions are real, our movements are real? I think that's where I would probably bet on. There's no other visual thinking than making it reality for consumers, Naina, in my view. Right? While I say this, I know for the fact that the trail of innovation is long. I think ton of innovation is underway. Just recently, at Ignite conference, we heard from a CEO, Satya, talk about the fact that mesh avatars, are being made available in private preview mode. Now, what that really means, right now, we're seeing each of the avatars. Now, the question is, when I'm an avatar, how real are my emotions? And by the way, my video is off, right? I'm not on the video at all. I've joined the metaverse, and my actions are depicted by my voice modulation, my voice signature. So when that happens, when nobody's seeing me through a camera, so how real can emotions be made for other parties in the meeting to connect with me as good as they connect with me in real life? I think that has to be very authentic and real for metaverse largely to become a success as we go along.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep.
And I know we spoke about headsets, but besides headsets, do you think we will soon see haptics finding their ways into the hands of the consumers, both literally and figuratively speaking?
Yeah, the interesting one, Saurabh. So here's my take, right? I mentioned earlier there are three trails on this very topic of metaverse, right? There's a consumer metaverse, commercial metaverse, and industrial metaverse. That's a point of view of Microsoft. Now, to your point, haptic and other gadgets coming into the space, I would probably look at industrial metaverse as a perfect platform, because let's take an example, right? If you're training somebody in the metaverse, let's talk about training doctors in the metaverse, right? When I say doctors, and especially for some of the most complicated surgical scenarios, you might get a few doctors in the metaverse and look at training them on specific actions as a pre-op or during surgery or after surgery activities, right? Now, in that scenario, imagine in the virtual world, you have a patient in an operation theater, on the operation theater table, doctors around the patient. If they're practicing surgery, right, as good as they're doing real surgery, I need to get apt feedback as I am learning or operating that particular patient. So largely my point of view is, in the industrial space, or rather you can bucket that as B2B space. I would expect some haptic to make entry, but largely on the consumer side, you want to make it simple, right? When it's a simple, the more gadgets come away, you're basically moving away from adoption, right? Right now, because of head-mounted devices being not so comfortable to wear, not so comfortable for the eyes, not so comfortable, after you remove it, is a put off for many consumers, right? So in that context, number one, for consumers, wearable glass in the B2B and industrial space, you're okay with head-mounted device for now, but haptics coming into the space will make a huge difference, because the very aspect of learning, understanding, interacting will be a lot more meaningful when you bring in touch and feel into the overall interaction. So that's my take on it, Saurabh.
And I know that you said earlier in this conversation the importance of feeling the presence as if you're actually being there. And I think adding the feedback, the way you explained it from haptics, would just make it much more real for anybody who's kind of using the platform, be it a user, be it a consumer, or somebody from the industry. So yeah, thanks for that. And this is all on the more on the hardware side, I would say. The other question that I had was around technologies like AI, ML, analytics. Do you, do you see that these will eventually get intertwined with metaverse? And if they would, in what capacity do you think they would?
No, no, absolutely. Another great question. So here's my response to that. Number one, metaverse is an eventual facade to experience, right? Now, today, the eventual facade for experience is our two-dimensional flat screens, be it computers, PCs, laptops, phones. Yeah, that's a facade I'm talking about. Now we're extending that facade to become three-dimensional. Now everything you've done so far, right? Let's take an example of a digital twin. Let's take an example of a digital twin of a hospital, right? By the way, I'm taking a lot of healthcare use cases because I personally feel when it comes to empowering any persona to stay productive and save lives, that should be doctors. So hence I bring in a lot of healthcare use cases. Let's take a hospital, digital twin of hospital, where today you're getting real-time stats from a lot of IoT sensors, be it at the lounge or be it in an operation theater, ICU, or even for that matter, individual patient beds. Now, imagine where you're looking at that stats in real time on your flat screen. Now, there are a lot of predictive models right there in terms of forecasting. Hey, looking at the current stats of a patient, what may happen to the patient in the foreseeable future, next 4 hours, 5 hours, as in the ICU as an example, looking at current stats of the patient. Now that's dominant. All of us know it's some is applied AI, some is machine learning, right? That's been applied for predictive nature of the patient. I mean, patient outcome, right? Now let's take that into the metaverse. Now, when I say metaverse, it's again experience. Experience is what takes center stage there. Now it's no different than you doing work in the physical world versus metaverse when it is a lot more relatable and real. So hence, while you're in the metaverse, I said earlier, it's a shared three-dimensional virtual space. When you're in that space, when you want to get work done, you need to bring in the same aspects of predictive models in terms of everything you've built so far into that space, because right now, rather than looking at a 2D screen of data, you're in the metaverse looking at a digital twin of a hospital in three-dimensional space. So you need the same predictive models, same outcome to be forecasting or anything that sort or anything of that sort to be made available in the metaverse also, right? Not just that. Imagine there are three people in the metaverse right now in the same I would say digital twin of hospital. A fourth person comes in, and you basically want that fourth person to help you with certain aspects. The fourth person needs some guidance in terms of, hey, by the way, I've just joined right now. What's my task and action, and what expect out of me? So now, can there be a digital assistant right there, helping the fourth person who joined in terms of helping the person understand, what has happened so far and what action needs to be done? It's almost like we saying, what, while you entering the space to help us on the surgical outcome or looking at the digital twin in terms of next action, you also get some predictive support or assistive support to stay productive in that space. So use cases are endless, honestly, right? We talk about IoT, we talk about AI, ML, blockchain, any of those innovations, they eventually will transcend into the space because that's where you're doing work now, right? Earlier, you're doing work on your flat screen in terms of accessing information. Now you're accessing information 3D space. So all those aspects are very real in the metaverse also, right? Hence, I'm saying in the industrial metaverse space, leveraging AI, ML will be a lot more relevant and dominant. But going forward, Saurabh, to your question, from a consumer perspective, everything that we experience metaverse will have so much of AI, ML baked in for the expressions to be real, for the very aspect of computer vision being central to how this all works. A speech. Look at this way. Right now we speak in English, right? Imagine you speak Japanese. I don't speak Japanese. I speak English. So for you, everything I speak has to be translated in real time to Japanese, right? Speech translation model comes in right there. So use cases are endless, honestly, in my view. The question is, what do you want to solve in the metaverse? What use case will light up in the metaverse? That's where bulk of energy will go into businesses to make it more real.
So I like how you sort of also provided the context with all of these brilliant use cases that you spoke of. It just makes it more relatable. And I think we kind of touched upon what mesh can let you do. I mean, it's a ready platform where we can create these applications using the power of metaverse and of course the other technologies around the periphery. But I also want to ask you from a Microsoft perspective. I know there's a very impressive lineup in terms of what services are being offered on the cloud, the Azure cloud. Can you just touch upon which of those can be leveraged in making these applications?
Got it. So, sort of quickly, everything that exists today, right? All the services, because we're talking about storage, we're talking about logic, we're talking about integration, we're talking about eventual endpoints in terms of APIs. So, everything we built so far will meaningfully be taken into the metaverse because that's where it'll all come together, right? In terms of applications. I spoke about digital twin, right? Now, eventually today you're seeing a digital twin of a hospital as an example on a flat screen. It's still a 2D model, but you're seeing it 3D model. You're still seeing a flat screen, it becomes 2D. Now, when I take that into metaverse, the entire solution is being reimagined. So everything that you will eventually consume will be from cloud services. So the solution while you built in the cloud, leveraging the cloud services, the same thing will eventually transcend into the metaverse. And there's no specific service because it's about logic. It's about a solution that you built, and only the facade is metaverse, right? But everything that you built so far is running in the cloud, and it's powered by everything I spoke so far in terms of middleware solutions, your databases, your API endpoints, the logic, so to speak. Everything will be behind the scenes powered by cloud. It's a classic showcase of solution being hosted in the cloud, intelligence baked in there, and some of it will be edge inferencing because going forward, the fact of the matter is edge computing is a lot more real than ever before with 5G coming in, and 5G coming in will benefit metaverse significantly because of the fact that we'll have least latency and high performance coming to us. So in its entirety, cloud will benefit the metaverse design thinking and to make solutions real in the metaverse.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think while we wait for the devices to kind of mature even more, because we know that there's a long way to go, things like cloud rendering would really make the difference in terms of what, or rather, how real can we make these spaces or these experiences. So I think that is another very, very interesting offering, so to speak, that we plan to tap on.
Absolutely. I forgot to mention that. See, look, there are many services which are available when it comes to taking solution into the metaverse. But end of the day, when it comes to rendering objects in the metaverse, this which is we call it as remote rendering, because end of the day you have high fidelity objects. See, earlier when I spoke about services from the cloud, yes, the cloud entirely is required for us to light up solutions in metaverse. But there are certain aspects which are very, very aligned towards three-dimensional spaces. So let's take an example where you have to basically automobile engineering scenario, right? So you're talking about designers coming in the metaverse and deciding on the next best design for automobile. Now, automobile as a vehicle, you're trying to render that in real time in 3D space. Now, unless you bring in relatability in terms of high fidelity images being rendered in real time in metaverse, it becomes impractical. So I would say services like Azure remote rendering comes in handy because your end device or a gadget will have limited compute capability. So with that, Azure remote rendering like services will come in handy to help you render in the cloud, or rather use cloud to render it, in 3D space in the metaverse.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant way to kind of address some of the existing limitations that we have. Yeah, all right. Thanks for providing the insights there, Sandeep.
Most welcome, Saurabh. Interesting question, by the way.
So, Sandeep, something that bothers us as we create more immersive spaces is really how it disconnects us from reality. When we think of the 5-year horizon, we imagine this tech to be in its peak and fully mature. So, as builders of the metaverse, what factors should we consider so as to guard us against the addictive nature of these technologies?
Got it. Thanks for the question, Naina. So here's my thinking, right? So right now, let's look at a problem on hand, outside of metaverse. Looking at the world of AI and ML, the bigger challenge for anybody right now is to bring responsible and ethical AI to be real, right? In terms of design principles, be it privacy, security, taking care of biases, all the stuff. Now, on the similar lines, there needs to be a governance model in the metaverse, which probably is lacking right now. The bulk of innovation that will happen from now on, in my perspective, is to ensure that the privacy, security, regulatory compliance, and of course, making sure that people's data and their identity is safeguarded. It can only become addictive. Of course, knowing the fact that it's a gamified way to look at work. Now, it is no surprise to anybody that this platform will become addictive as you go along. That's where Gen Z, Gen Alpha is spending today. But for people to stay on that trail, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the trust factor becomes central. And when it's a trust factor, when you bring in the responsible AI design principles equivalent in the metaverse, I think that's a true arrival of a platform wherein users will feel a lot more safe, lot more secure, and when I say safe and secure, the question is, like each of us feel safe and secure with certain guardrails in the physical world that we live in. If the similar elements are made available in the metaverse, I think that's a true arrival of the platform, and probably that's an area where designers and creators need to spend time to make sure that consumers consumers experience becomes central in terms of all these aspects, right? That's my take on this, Naina. And again, as I said earlier, these are my personal opinion in terms of how technology should be innovated from here on. Very early stages. We use existing technologies in terms of its current state, right? It's still evolving. Right now, we are on the platform, and we are able to connect with each other brilliantly. But the question is, from here on, can it be a lot more personal in terms of interactions? This interaction, is it safe? Is it secure? Is my privacy safeguarded? I think those are the questions that I would have as we go along for any platform in this space.
And I agree. I mean, I think we'll have to figure out a way to make sure that there is enough privacy, there's enough security around these applications. I mean, I read somewhere that you could perhaps assume the avatar of a table or a piece of furniture and eavesdrop on an important conversation. So those are some of the things that we'll probably have to address, but maybe that's for another day. For now, thank you so much, Sandeep, for being on this podcast. And I know Nana said that we could spend the day talking to you, but of course, we have to bring it to an end. So this is a good time to wrap this up. And we thoroughly enjoyed this session and are looking forward to working closely with Microsoft and yourself in this space. Thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Saurabh and Naina, for hosting me. It was my pleasure being part of this podcast and reflect on a lot of questions you had, and they were very meaningful. I'm sure our audience will benefit from the conversation. Thanks once again for hosting me.
Thank you, Sandeep.